Tonight, Centrelink overwhelmed by a country in crisis. Thousands queue for support as the shutdown begins. Good evening, I'm Juanita Phillips. This is ABC News. The NRL relents and agrees to postpone its season. The Tokyo Olympics is also expected to be delayed. Parents left scratching their heads over the state's coronavirus schools policy.
Who do you listen to? What do you listen to? Should I listen to the principal here or the Premier or the Prime Minister? Who?
And the clean-up finally begins. The bulldozers arrive in fire-ravaged Conjola. It's been a day that not so long ago would have been unimaginable. Business after business in New South Wales forced to shut down indefinitely, and thousands of people queuing outside Centrelink, desperate for help after losing their jobs, all as coronavirus continues to spread. At midday, businesses including pubs, clubs, cinemas and gyms closed, and cafes and restaurants became takeaway venues only. Schools are shutting in Victoria and the ACT. They're still open here, but the Premier is urging parents to keep their children at home if possible. As well as the queues at Centrelink, the MyGov website crashed. The share market lost another $100 billion, with banks and industrial companies among the biggest fallers. In the words of the Prime Minister, for many Australians, it's all becoming the toughest year of our lives.
They're like scenes from the Great Depression. Block after block and around corners across the country, long queues of Australians trying to access support.
It's like watching a horror movie on TV, except it doesn't finish in 90 minutes. It just goes on day after day.
There's no divide between city and country in this crisis.
We just need some help to get through this time.
Hours in a line doesn't seem like social distancing, but many don't have a choice and are accessing this safety net for the first time after losing work.
I'm a personal trainer, so I've been going from 30 sessions a week to 0 sessions a week. So basically I don't have any more income.
I run a cafe and at this current stage we're going to have to close our doors. I have rent to pay, I have bills.
When the clock struck midday, New South Wales switched over into its new way of life. Businesses forced to close in an effort to stop the spread of the virus.
That's pretty scary because I do have a mortgage, I do have a car loan as well, HECS to pay, everything, yeah.
But it's a tale of two sets of rules. Just next door, a hair salon not required to close. Shutdowns are happening in every suburb.
We've been here since 1978, and for people to be affected in this way is just absolutely unbelievable.
Even if businesses aren't forced to shut, a drop in demand means some will struggle. Hearts are weighing heavy.
I'm pretty devastated. It's been everything to get to this point.
Last drinks came and went at bars, even in the bush. And the only thing sadder than a pub with no beer is a pub with no patrons.
A pub's more than just a place to come and have a beer. I've got plenty of people that actually say to me it's much cheaper to come here and have a couple of beers than what it is to go to the psychiatrist.
So we purely trade on entertainment. We have no food, takeaway service, we have no bottle shop, so that's us.
Queensland has announced it's shutting its border. It's flagged exemptions for border communities, but there's still no detail.
It's very confusing because there are people which travel north and south, and when they get this message, they're going to say, well, what am I going to do tomorrow?
With the situation changing so quickly every day, lining up seems to be the only constant.
I've got older parents at home that no one allowed to get them out of the house, so we're doing the shopping for them.
And no one knows when things will return to normal. Jonathan Hare, ABC News, Sydney.
Now to some breaking news. After weeks of resisting, the NRL has just announced it is suspending the 2020 season because of coronavirus. Chloe Hart joins me now from NRL headquarters. Chloe, why is the NRL acting now after being so insistent that the game would go on?
Yes, the NRL has reluctantly pulled the pin on the 2020 season, and that's on health advice from experts who say they can no longer guarantee the health and safety of players as this situation deteriorates so rapidly. All 16 clubs participated in a phone hookup with management just a short time ago and were told about the suspension. It's not clear how long that will last or if any football will be played this year. And another big contributor to this decision was the fact that the Queensland government announced today that it was closing its borders where 3 of the teams are from.
It is indeed a deeply sad day, but one of the most responsible days in our game's history. We would not have reached this point unless the conditions had shifted so dramatically and so exponentially. Today's a difficult day for the rugby league community, both here at head office and across all of our clubs and players. Our priority is to do everything we can to give our game the best chance for a long and sustainable future.
Chloe, Todd Greenberg talked there of the game's future. What does that future look like?
Yes, well, Todd Greenberg gave a stark warning for what the future of the game could look like. He said he can't make any guarantees that all 16 clubs will exist as of next year. He was adamant that the entire industry's finances would take a huge hit right from the executive level to players facing salary cuts and even for staff to take a massive hit as well. The offices here today at NRL headquarters were closed this afternoon. Staff were told to take annual leave from now up until May the 1st. As of the players, they won't be at training tomorrow. The Warriors will head back to New Zealand shortly, and administrators of the game are still pushing for federal assistance from the federal government. They want to be included in part of the stimulus package. As they say, the financial situation for the game is still catastrophic.
Chloe Hart reporting there. Well, it's been a confusing day for parents and students, and many feel none the wiser tonight. The Premier told parents to pull their kids out of school if they could, or keep sending them to class if that wasn't possible. The directive is at odds with what the Prime Minister recommends, but the Premier says there's no contradiction.
A splintered message.
Children should go to school tomorrow.
We'll be encouraging parents to keep their children at home,
with the Premier's updated advice issued during this morning's school drop-off, leaving parents perplexed.
Well, I guess I'll be going upstairs and just checking and then possibly taking my child home.
What do you listen to? Should I listen to the principal here or the Premier or the Prime Minister? Who?
While schools will remain open, parents are now being urged not to send their children for the rest of the term.
What we're seeing is absolute confusion, and against that backdrop, what we will have is chaos in our schools.
The Premier says the reasons are pragmatic and not due to health concerns.
For teachers, it means one unit of teaching. There won't be a separate class for kids at home. There won't be a separate class for kids that are at school.
1 in 3 parents is already keeping their kids at home. For those that can't, schools will stay open for now.
Because at the moment I'm working at Woolies, so we need to be there for everyone else.
His dad works at RPA and I'm setting up phone lines for the coronavirus hotline, so we need him to go to school.
The move comes as New South Wales records the biggest 24-hour increase in new coronavirus cases. Of the new infections, one was at this childcare centre in Sydney's east, but it's unclear whether it was a worker or a child. According to the New South Wales government, parents shouldn't pull their young children out of childcare, but should keep their school-aged children at home. It's prompted the opposition to question why there's one set of rules for students, another for toddlers.
There must be a definite position, a clear, concise position from the Premier, and we're not getting that right now. Schools, TAFE colleges, childcare centres must close this week.
Schools are now contacting parents and students, letting them know how to access online lessons. Learning how to navigate the virtual world is the latest frontier in a fast-moving pandemic. Amy Greenbank, ABC News, Sydney.
State political reporter Ashley Raper joins me now. Ashley, yesterday we were warned to expect a much broader shutdown, but today the Premier didn't go that far. Is this some kind of a compromise with the PM?
Juanita, it's clear the Premier wanted to take a more extreme approach than the Prime Minister, but in the end it's Scott Morrison who has prevailed. Gladys Berejiklian rushed out a statement yesterday saying there would be what she described as a comprehensive shutdown of New South Wales. But after a meeting of the National Cabinet, the shutdown that occurred today is not as expansive as foreshadowed. The mixed messaging coming from the state and the Commonwealth threatens to undermine confidence in leadership during a national crisis. And that's particularly apparent with schools. The directive by Gladys Berejiklian to keep children home, despite schools being open, is at odds with the strong language that came from the Prime Minister to send children to school. It's added to the uncertainty and confusion at a time, Juanita, when people want clarity.
So Ashley, take us through the latest COVID-19 numbers.
There are 136 new cases in New South Wales in the past 24 hours, which is again the single biggest increase in that time frame. So the total number now is 669. Of the new infections, one is at a childcare centre in Vaucluse, another is a resident at the Quakers Hill nursing home. And the cases connected to the Ruby Princess cruise ship, which passengers disembarked from in Sydney last week, continue to climb. There are now 48 people infected, 27 in New South Wales and 21 interstate.
Ashley Raper, thank you. The rapid shutdown of many non-essential services has seen tens of thousands join the ranks of the unemployed, many for the first time in their lives. It happened so quickly that government computers and phone lines couldn't cope with the demand, adding to the shock and distress of people whose lives have changed in an instant. Here's political editor Andrew Probin.
The first symptom of an economic pandemic.
I'm here because my job no longer exists.
It's not just lower class, middle class or high class. Everybody's getting affected by it.
Thousands lining up outside Centrelink offices across the country.
You can feel it. Everyone's a little bit funny and on edge.
Everyone's anxious. No one knows what's going on.
Joining the job queue, many for the first time.
They are lining up at Centrelink offices as we speak. Something unimaginable at this scale only weeks ago.
Livelihoods extinguished by the coronavirus shutdown.
I'm at the stage now where I'm on the scrap heap because I'm 64 years old.
Anxieties heightened when they couldn't get help online.
MyGov has not been offline.
The minister wrongly insisting the website was operational, but overwhelmed by a malicious cyber attack, a claim he was forced to retract an hour later.
The DDoS alarms show no evidence of a specific attack today.
This wasn't a cyber attack, it was an incompetence attack.
The government has promised to boost capacity online and extend call centre hours to keep up with demand.
For many, young and old, 2020 will be the toughest year of our lives.
MPs gathered in reduced numbers, sanitised and spaced at a healthy distance to pass tens of billions of dollars in emergency measures, including income support. Younger Australians have long been told they're the lucky ones. Well, hardship has come knocking. The government expects the coronavirus crisis will see 1 million Australians lose their jobs over the next few months, more than doubling the unemployment rate to about 11%. And it's already banking on having to spend an extra $40 billion by August to further prop up the economy. A new normal has come suddenly.
Obviously, a lot of people throughout the whole of Australia that are in the same boat as me. So just keep my chin up.
Andrew Probin, ABC News, Canberra.
As the country shuts down, tens of thousands of small businesses face financial ruin. More than $100 billion in help has been promised, but will it save jobs and will it arrive in time? Andrew Robertson has been looking into it.
For Sydney shop owner Terry Winter, the government's help is welcome, but more is needed.
For us, it's looking at around 16% of total staff income. And that's just not enough to keep an employee if the stores can't be open.
Employers with a turnover of up to $50 million will get at least $20,000 with a maximum payment of $100,000. Charities and not-for-profits will also be eligible. The money will come from the tax office and will be based on the amount of income tax the business collects from its staff. The handouts will be paid in instalments and in most cases they'll continue to flow till mid-October. But there is a catch. Employers first have to lodge their March business activity statement, which means the first payment will be mid-April at the earliest.
For some businesses, the first payment will be too late, there is no doubt.
To encourage lending, the government is now prepared to guarantee 50% of loans up to a total of $40 billion. But would anyone want to borrow in the current climate?
We're going to be overcommitted already, so the chances of wanting to get loans is pretty low.
As the government tries to limit the economic impact of this health crisis, the Prime Minister says the help being offered to business comes with a very big string attached. When the worst is over, Mr Morrison says all those workers who lose their jobs in the coming months should be rehired.
This is the unwritten contract that is being undertaken between Australian employees and employers as we speak.
Terry Winter says while all businesses want to keep all their staff, the reality may be very different. Andrew Robertson, ABC News.
It's increasingly likely the Tokyo Olympic Games will be postponed until next year because of the pandemic. The International Olympic Committee says the Games won't start in July but also won't be cancelled. Here's national sport reporter David Mark.
Last week, the IOC insisted the Games were on. But the world moves quickly in the age of the coronavirus.
They announced that they would consider postponing the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games.
In a letter to athletes overnight, contradicting his position of just 4 days ago, IOC President Thomas Bach said cancellation of the Olympic Games would destroy the Olympic dream of 11,000. Therefore, it's not on our agenda. This morning, the heads of all the Australian Olympic sports met.
We've decided to plan towards the hosting of a Games in 2021 in Tokyo.
We will think of the athletes first and foremost. We may have no option but to consider postponing the Games.
The decision has come as a relief to Australia's 2012 gold medalist in the 50k walk, Jared Talent.
It wouldn't have been a fair Games if it was to go ahead. With so many countries in lockdown, athletes not being able to train, so it's definitely a good decision what's happened. I'm sure quite a few athletes will be relieved around the world.
It gives certainty to the athletes, it gives certainty to our sports, and that's the most important thing, and that's what they needed.
Now comes the logistical nightmare.
Moving the world's biggest sporting event that involves so many people, so many sports, not just athletes but also the world's media, sponsors, the rest, is not easy to do.
The IOC has bowed to the inevitable in the face of enormous pressure. It's given itself 4 weeks to organise the details of the postponement and bought itself some of that most valuable commodity, time. David Mark, ABC News.
There's been a call for clearer messaging on social distancing, particularly targeting young people. Figures show that out of Australia's 1,100 coronavirus cases, more than 1/5 are among people aged under 30.
As many Australians ignored the advice and filled pubs, clubs and public spaces over the weekend, the Prime Minister is adamant tougher rules were needed.
We don't now have any confidence that people would refrain from gathering in those ways, in those places. Dr Murphy has made it pretty clear that that is principally amongst the younger community.
And it's true, most young people don't get significant disease. But as a young person, you don't want to be responsible for the severe and possibly fatal disease of an older, vulnerable Australian.
But many young people say they are being cautious.
The uncertainty, I think, is concerning. For my own health, personally, probably less so. For other people, a lot so.
Even so, some are clearly not heeding the warnings.
I knew lots of people having like parties and stuff themselves because they were like, yeah, quarantine party, but it's like you're not practicing social distancing at all.
Yeah, I've heard of a few house parties and the bottle shop's still open, so I think they might carry on.
Until they say we're in lockdown and we can't leave our houses, I don't think anyone's going to take it seriously.
The opposition is calling for a clearer message.
These actions might be regrettable, but hectoring will not help. Clear explanations and clarity will.
Has the messaging been clear about it?
I think so. Yes and no. Yes and no. It's sort of obviously it's a new thing every day.
Kind of, yeah. Maybe too much of it that you can't really pick out what they're trying to say.
Others don't want to believe what they're hearing.
I spent the weekend just gone in quite a busy way. I caught up with friends and I sort of in denial, really. Yeah.
But with job losses now happening, reality is starting to set in. James Carmody, ABC News.
Still to come this hour, the bungle that turned cruise ship passengers into a public health risk.
From the moment we left the ship, and then, just not use a good, go straight through. Didn't ask any fevers or any health checks or that, it was just straight on down.
I hope they're appropriately tracked by New South Wales Health, otherwise this is a real own goal.
Also, Dr Norman Swan with his analysis of the latest protective measures. That's coming up.
As bushfire-ravaged communities cope with the added stress caused by coronavirus, there's some encouraging news. Residents in Conjola Park and Lake Conjola in the Shoalhaven are finally getting the clean-up they've been pleading for. Almost 90 sites are being cleared of debris in a massive operation. The ABC's Bushfire Recovery reporter Philippa McDonald has more from Conjola Park.
The ferocity of the New Year's Eve fires destroyed Penny Lovelock's home and all her artwork, but she didn't want to miss this moment.
And now it's like, yes, we can move on.
3 people died in the fires, which destroyed 89 homes in a couple of hours.
Up until this point, people have been living amongst the rubble.
That's my shed. I used to grow plants in there.
At Lake Conjola, rugby league great Ron Coote's family survived by treading water in the lake. The family lost everything they owned.
All my old footy memorabilia is gone. Just nothing there. You just get a bit lost. You get a bit sentimental. We're not going to put the fireplace in. That'll go.
He's already looking to rebuild with the same builder who constructed his dream home back in 1988.
It's the start of the future.
5,000 properties around the state are earmarked for the clean-up.
It's Australia's largest natural disaster, and it's a massive disaster recovery project.
Just what to do with an estimated 2 million tonnes of waste and debris across the state is a major challenge in this clean-up operation. Here, the bricks will be crushed and turned into road base and used for landscaping, and the steel will be salvaged, eventually recycled and used for concrete reinforcement.
Be nice to get rid of this fence.
This is what's left of Katrina and Ken Walsh's 6-bedroom home.
We haven't been able to move forward. We've tried to get some things in the planning, but that's very difficult when you can't get onto your block.
Just how long it will take depends on the final assessment of any asbestos in the debris. Philippa McDonald, ABC News, Conjola Park.
Now, you can't get a public gathering any smaller than this. Germany has banned meetings of more than 2 people. It's the latest European country to face a dramatic increase in coronavirus infections. And Chancellor Angela Merkel has gone into isolation. Europe correspondent Bridget Brennan reports.
Some moments of cheer among the growing fear and anxiety. Germans appeared on their balconies to thank health workers on the front line. And some musicians gave impromptu performances to comfort their neighbours.
If you play songs from home, it brings people closer together. Then hopefully that makes everybody feel better.
But after many ignored social distancing advice, the German government has now placed tough restrictions on movement, some of the strictest measures seen in the world. Groups of more than 2 people are now banned from gathering in public.
Being in public is permitted only alone, except with your family or with one other person.
Shortly after making the announcement, Angela Merkel herself was quarantined after learning her doctor had tested positive for the virus. As a disaster unfolds in Italy, Russia and Cuba are sending medical specialists and equipment. Another 651 people died in Italy in the last 24 hours. Italians are being warned not to let their guard down, even as the rate of new infections fell to its lowest level since the outbreak began. With Britain just 2 or 3 weeks behind Italy, Boris Johnson signalled a widespread lockdown could be on the horizon. Many took advantage of the sunshine on the weekend, flocking to parks and markets. Now police could be called in to force people back indoors. For the most part, the streets in London are now deserted after the British government shut down businesses. It's now turning its attention to 1.5 million vulnerable people with underlying health conditions. They're being told to stay at home for 3 months. Bridget Brennan, ABC News, London.
There are concerns about an increase in coronavirus cases in Indonesia after official figures showed the death rate is on par with Italy. 48 people have died and 514 others have tested positive for COVID-19. That's a mortality rate of 9%. But it's feared the number of cases is being underreported and tens of thousands of people could be infected. Authorities have converted an entire athletes' village in Jakarta into an emergency hospital to hold 4,000 patients. On to finance now. The local share market has suffered one of the heaviest falls of the crisis so far, more than 6%. Here's Alan Kohler.
Well, the market opened 8.4% lower, which would have made it the second biggest one-day fall in this bear market so far. But a few brave buyers moved in and got it back to a close of minus 6%, down to number 5 on the 2020 hit parade. Ardent Leisure, which closed Dreamworld today, fell 36%, making it the biggest loser on the market in the past month. It's down 90%. Village Roadshow fell 26% today as its cinemas closed. Retailers Adairs, Kathmandu and Nick Scali down 27, 31 and 14% today. Afterpay 28%. Among the leaders, investors just ran away from Macquarie and AMP. Mall operators like Vicinity Centres and Stockland were also dumped, and the banks fell 10 and 12%. But there were some rises, including Sydney Airport, CSL and Horizon. Also, Newcrest rose with the gold price, although the iron ore price fell over the weekend and oil dropped 10%. The US market fell more than 4% on Friday, while in Asia today there were falls in Hong Kong and Korea, but a rise in Tokyo. And the Australian dollar has fallen a cent since Friday night as money stampedes into the safety of US Treasury bonds, pushing up the prices of both the bonds and the US dollars needed to buy them. And speaking of bonds, you remember last Thursday the Reserve Bank launched its version of quantitative easing, which involves targeting a 3-year bond rate of 0.25% to keep down the interest rates on fixed-term loans. Well, here's a chart of the 3-year bond rate. And it's almost there, down to 0.25%, but not quite. And finally, a bit of good news. Petrol prices have been infuriatingly going up lately, but they're headed down now. Should be $1 a litre soon. And that's finance.
Time for the weather now with Lara Hyams. And Lara, it was much cooler today.
The conditions were quite mild and they are set to continue as we go into the week. We got to a top of about 23 degrees, consistent conditions in the west and slightly cooler along the coast. Minimum temperatures were generally average today. Our lowest recorded at Thredbo with 1 degree. Cooler conditions in the Illawarra and Riverina areas and also the central west. Having a look at the satellite now, increased cloud cover over parts of South Australia. We do have some low cloud cover that is coming through New South Wales, Victoria and Tasmania, thanks to some of the onshore flow, and some of that cloud will persist over parts of the top end. On the synoptic chart, the slow-moving troughs through Queensland will move to New South Wales and extend into Victoria. That could trigger a few showers along the ranges, but most of the country will be dry, and that's thanks to dominant high-pressure systems. Around the nation for tomorrow, some cloudy patches for a lot of the east coast. We still have some warmer temperatures, though, for Queensland. In the southeast corridor, cooler conditions and finer conditions for the west. There have been some falls already on the mid-north coast. Coffs Harbour recorded about 17 millimetres. Those falls will continue, albeit light, and we could see some falls, though, for the snowy mountains. In the north of the state, there is a chance of showers. The coastal showers will move inland. On the waters, southeasterly winds from 10 to 15 knots, reaching up to 20 knots offshore and seas 1 to 1.5 metres. As we go further south, partly cloudy with a chance of showers. Those falls likely to be along the coastal fringe area. On the waters, northeasterly winds picking up at 10 knots, picking up to 15 in the afternoon. For the interior, mostly sunny, the chance of a light shower near the South Australian border with temperatures reaching the low 30s. On Sydney waters, southeast northeasterly winds below 10 knots and seas about a metre. And as we have a look around the state tomorrow, there will be a few showers along the northern coastal area as well as the adjacent ranges. There is a chance of a shower that will extend possibly through the central parts. In the city tomorrow, there will be a top of 24 degrees and it will be slightly warmer in the west. And looking to the week ahead, we'll see some moderate temperatures and that will be getting to the mid-20s. The chance of showers will pick up from about Wednesday. There will be light, better conditions forecast though for Sunday.
Thanks for that, Lara. Lee Sales is here now with 7:30.